Welcome to YouTube Pedia. Discover the greatest stories from history, science, and beyond. If you're curious about the world, subscribe now and join our journey through knowledge. Let's get started. Fidel Castro, the man behind the revolution and his enigmatic legacy. Fidel Castro, a name that stirs both admiration and controversy, remains one of the most influential and polarizing figures of the 20th century. His life, full of triumphs, tragedies, and political upheavals, casts a shadow that stretches across the world. Born in 1926 in a small town in Cuba, his rise from the son of a wealthy landowner to the revolutionary leader of the Cuban state is a story of raw ambition, ideological zeal, and a relentless pursuit of power. The early years, a rebel from the start. Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz was born into a family of privilege. His father, Angel Castro, was a wealthy sugar plantation owner who had migrated to Cuba from Spain. Despite his father's wealth, Fidel grew up in a modest environment, living in a rural town where his father's estate was located. From an early age, Castro displayed an inquisitive mind and a rebellious streak. He attended various schools, and by his teenage years, he was already showing signs of his fierce determination and radical beliefs. His studies took him to Havana, where he attended the prestigious University of Havana. It was here that he encountered the ideas of social justice and the profound inequalities that plagued Cuba. His involvement in student activism during this period laid the groundwork for his future political journey. Castro became deeply influenced by Marxist ideology, and as his political views solidified, his desire to challenge the status quo grew. The spark of revolution, a fight against dictatorship. In the 1950s, Cuba was under the rule of Fulgencio Batista, a military dictator who had come to power through a coup. The country was rife with corruption, inequality, and the suffering of its people. Castro, along with his group of young revolutionaries, sought to overthrow Batista's regime and implement a government that would address the deep social and economic issues facing Cuba. The movement began in 1953 with the failed attack on the Moncada barracks. Although this initial attempt ended in disaster, it marked the beginning of Castro's rise as a symbol of resistance. Castro was arrested, and during his trial he famously declared, "History will absolve me," cementing his image as a man committed to his cause even in the face of great adversity. After spending nearly 2 years in prison, he was released in 1955 as part of a political amnesty. This pivotal moment set the stage for the legendary guerrilla campaign that would follow. In 1956, Castro and his small band of rebels, including his brother Raul Castro and the Argentine revolutionary Che Guevara, embarked on a perilous journey to the Sierra Maestra Mountains. With little more than determination, a few weapons, and the support of rural peasants, they waged a guerrilla war against Batista's forces. Over the next 2 years, their movement gained momentum, attracting supporters from all walks of life. By 1959, the Batista regime collapsed, and Fidel Castro emerged as the undisputed leader of Cuba. A new Cuba, revolutionary leader with a vision. Once in power, Castro wasted no time in implementing his revolutionary ideals. His government nationalized industries, redistributed land to the poor, and pursued policies of social reform that aimed to create an egalitarian society. Castro's government introduced free healthcare and education to all Cubans, which remains one of his most lauded achievements. These changes were hailed as significant progress by many, while others criticized Castro for suppressing dissent and limiting political freedoms. Under Castro's leadership, Cuba became a beacon of resistance to imperialism and capitalism. Castro's alliances with the Soviet Union led to Cuba becoming a socialist state, but this relationship also placed Cuba in direct conflict with the United States. The Cold War tensions were felt keenly on the island, and one of the most infamous moments in Castro's tenure occurred during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. When the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. The 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union was one of the most dangerous moments of the Cold War, but Castro's resolve and the diplomacy of U.S. President John F. Kennedy averted catastrophe. The revolutionary's paradox, triumphs and controversies. While Castro's supporters praised him for his revolutionary achievements, his critics condemned him for his authoritarian rule. He consolidated power, suppressing opposition and dissent, leading to widespread human rights abuses. The Cuban people lived under strict control with limited freedom of speech and the press. Many political opponents were imprisoned, and thousands of Cubans fled to the United States, seeking asylum from the oppressive regime. Castro's policies of economic reform had mixed results. While the country's healthcare and education systems flourished, Cuba's economy remained heavily dependent on Soviet aid. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Cuba was plunged into a deep economic crisis known as the Special Period. The loss of Soviet support meant the loss of essential resources, and Cuba struggled to maintain its socialist model without the financial backing that had sustained it for decades. Despite these challenges, Castro's leadership was characterized by a deeply ingrained sense of defiance. Even in the face of economic collapse, he continued to speak out against U.S. imperialism, challenging the global capitalist order. His speeches, often fiery and impassioned, became a hallmark of his reign. A legacy of division. Fidel Castro's legacy remains one of the most controversial in modern history. To some, he is a hero, a revolutionary who stood up to the might of the United States and sought to create a society based on equality and social justice. To others, he is a dictator who stifled freedom, controlled his people with an iron fist, and imposed a system that led to widespread poverty and suffering. Despite the mixed views of his legacy, there is no denying the monumental impact that Fidel Castro had on the world. His ideas, actions, and defiance of global powers resonated with those who opposed Western imperialism. However, his methods and the repression that occurred under his regime have left a permanent mark on the history of Cuba. The enigmatic end, Fidel's retirement and deaths. In 2006, Castro was forced to relinquish power due to health problems. His brother Raul Castro took over the presidency, but Fidel continued to influence Cuban politics from the sidelines until his death in 2016. His retirement marked the end of an era, but the debate over his leadership continues to shape Cuban society and global politics. Fidel Castro's life was defined by revolution, defiance, and contradictions. His legacy, whether seen as a triumph of socialism or a tragic story of dictatorship, will continue to be debated for generations. For all the admiration or disdain he garnered, Fidel Castro remains one of the most enigmatic figures of the 20th century, a symbol of resistance and a figure whose story is far from finished. Final thoughts. Fidel Castro's life was full of contradictions, triumphs, and sorrows. The legacy he left behind continues to shape the political landscape of Cuba and the wider world. His determination, revolutionary spirit, and commitment to his vision of social justice were undeniable, even as the methods he employed were highly controversial. What do you think of Fidel Castro's legacy? Was he a hero or a tyrant? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to YouTube Pedia for more insightful videos on history, politics, and the world's most influential figures.